Welcome to the Helena Sips podcast, where I, Helena Nicklin, talk to creative humans who've built careers doing what they truly love and discover the rituals that keep them grounded and bring them joy. And this week...
At the moment, the scents I'm working with, these extraordinary geranium fragrances, have a very warming, grounding and uplifting fragrance. And it's so strange. That's the same sort of mood that I felt with my previous business, but in a totally different direction. But it actually boils down to exactly the same feeling. It's quite bizarre that I haven't really shifted the dial very much. I'm just working with different tools.
I talked to Cath Kidston.
My guest today is Cath Kidston. Cath is one of the UK's most influential creative founders, best known for building a global lifestyle brand rooted in warmth, nostalgia and the pleasure of everyday living. More recently, she's returned to a more personal, founder-led chapter with C.Atherley, a body care and home fragrance brand inspired by nature, ritual and the remarkable aroma of scented geraniums. Today we'll be talking about all things creative and sensory and the courage it takes to begin again. Cath, it's wonderful to see you again. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
So nice to chat to you.
And where are you coming from us today?
I'm in Greece. I'm in a little house on an island called Spetses, but we're in the winter here with jerseys on and everything, mending our roof. And so I set up my office here, so I'm working half the day, then off to do the roof and things. And then it's off back to Athens and back to work.
Oh, lovely. I mean, not exactly the Greek island dream that you think of initially. Oh.
You know, it's so beautiful in the winter, and it's very lovely because it's all the local people here, obviously, and I'm sure they much prefer it when the island isn't full of tourists and so on. And we know so many faces now to say good morning in the street. So it's a very nice feeling, a lovely community, and I recommend Greece in the winter.
So what are we sharing today? What is in the glass?
Oh, so I'm sitting here. Has to be lemon and ginger tea. I've done this for years. I chop up a piece of ginger and I don't put lemon peel. I literally squirt a little bit of lemon and chopped up ginger and I make a tea. And sometimes I brew it in a cafetiere. Sometimes I just chuck it in a mug, which I've done today. And what I love about it, I'm told it's very good for me. I love the taste of it because actually I'm slightly limited. I don't drink alcohol and I don't drink tea. I don't like a cup of British tea. I don't know what it is. I've never liked it, but I've discovered this lemon and ginger drink, which I'm completely hooked to. And it's very good if it gets cold and it's spicy. So it's something that you can just have on the go all the time. And it's permanently within sight and say all day long, I always have my ginger tea.
But it sounds like the ritual of making it yourself is part of it as well. You're not just dunking in a tea bag.
Yeah, no, the tea bag doesn't work. There's something about the actual fresh ginger and lemon that is completely transformative. Anyway, I highly recommend it. My dentist said not too much lemon, it's bad for your teeth. Anyway.
I have lemon every morning, but I have it. I drink it through a straw like a child because of that, because of the acid. Yeah.
Oh, I haven't thought of that one.
It doesn't quite have the same feeling as like sipping from a warm mug, to be fair, but it does feel like it's doing me good. So
it absolutely will be. Yeah.
Yeah. It sounds like you've got a really good balance. Obviously, you're incredibly busy building another brand, but taking your time and taking time out to spend time in Spetses in Greece and then coming back to work. So I guess that kind of balance you've learned is something that you absolutely need as part of your art of living.
It's tricky, that one. Yes, it's the ideal. But for example, yesterday I was juggling Zoom calls all day with, the lovely man coming to help mend the roof. And it is sometimes like packing in two lives into one. I think all of us are familiar with work and home life, how to get the balance. It sometimes can clash. Yes. And having started my business, it's coming up the 3rd anniversary. I forgot how things mushroom. I thought, okay, I'm going to start a small company, very contained, all of this and that. And obviously lots starts going on and I have a lovely team. And I can't just drop doing things and be here for a few weeks or something. If I come out here, And thank goodness, I think we all got confidence in not working from an office to a degree through those strange time in the pandemic. But now, being able to talk like we are now or whatever, it does mean one can work in all sorts of places. But also that can impact on one's home life a bit, can't it? Very difficult to have boundaries around when, with time and all of that.
How do you put your boundaries in?
With difficulty, definitely. I wake up earlier than my husband, and I like to get up not that early, but 7 in the morning. I'll be up, and I like to take a cup of coffee in the morning to bed. Not have the lemon first, then the coffee, and I have my laptop and peace and quiet. And I always do an hour or two's work. It seems to be 9 o'clock before I know it. Up at 7 and Sundays, it's 9 and I still haven't got up. But it's sort of segmenting times of the day. But the thing I'm really trying to do is I've now got a new thing on my phone, which it pings me a lullaby at 10:15 at night, and it switches off at 10 and wakes up at 7. And it's a sort of reminder to get a bit peaceful, maybe read a book, do whatever at that time. And I'm really liking having that on. I can break into it. You can say, give me another 10 minutes or let me do something. But it makes me feel a bit badly when I do that. So it's a slight a sort of assistant in that front, not very well explaining it. But I like having those sort of aids.
It's a good idea because I suppose it's meant to make you feel bad for going, no, give me another 10 minutes.
I've been
Yes.
reading more books. It's really good, actually.
Oh, great. What kind of books do you read?
I read all sorts. At the moment, I'm reading. I never knew anything about him. This man, Kevin McNally, who had all the restaurants in New York, and he's written a biography, and it's fascinating and so well read. Really enjoying that. I tend to read biographies a bit. I read one about Pamela Harriman recently, a new one, and then as a result of that, I read about her stepdaughter Brooke Hayward. All these kind of things, and then the other thing I've just been reading, and I can't remember the exact name. I was given a great Christmas present, which is a manual of 1,001 varieties of geranium. And I'm always learning and practicing and trying to think about which ones I'm going to grow. You know, you and I've talked before, I have a passion for geraniums and
Yes.
scented ones in particular, but I also love some of the very decorative ones to bring in the house. But there are so many of them with different varieties. I mean, the breadth of this plant, I suppose it's like roses they compare to in the way
Yeah.
that there's such a broad selection of the species.
Most people understand that roses are, yes, but geraniums, no. You say 1,001, and I guess there's probably
But
more than that as well, right? Or
I
is
bet
that?
there are, yes, absolutely. But this is just the book is photographs of this, and so I'm like thinking, whoa, how this time of year is a very good time, if not a bit too late almost, for ordering the little plants because they tend to come April, May. You grow them at that time of year, so I always it's like going through a sort of sweet shop catalogue. Which ones am I going to try next year or whatever it is? So I have been looking. It's quite fun. So that's some bedside reading.
Technically work as well in a way.
Absolutely.
So we've kind of touched on it already, but we've started big. Let's continue. So what does the art of living really mean to you?
It's such a broad subject, that, isn't it? I'm thinking about it. I mean, it has to start with me visually, because I've always perceived myself as a very visual person. And so it's my surroundings that makes a difference to me. I mean, I'm one of those people who, if I'm sitting on the sofa watching TV and I see the picture is crooked, I'll have to go and straighten it. I'm very kind of totally absorbed in all my surroundings and things like that. So if you take it back to the art of living, I think creating a nest, creating a home, and making something feel welcoming and alive is a big power that drives me. And you can take that in different ways. So, say when someone arrives, I like having the welcoming drinks tray, the delicious lunch, whatever it is. And then by the bed, I'll pick some flowers and make sure they have a nice book to read. And it's about
taking care of all the detail of of how we live, really, isn't it? But it's that visual approach probably is the key driver for me. And then I'm mindful from that how one creates that in different ways.
And of course, that's why your global brand did as well as it, well, has done as well as it has. Because that is something that I really feel is innate in all of us, that need to feel at home. And obviously Cath Kidston, the brand, was built upon that, but at a time when it was really all about 90s minimalism as well. Do you think it's this kind of really natural homemaking approach that spoke to people that made it such a success where, at a time when we really weren't focusing on all of that?
I think the thing that I discovered along the way, which I didn't know, I set about making something I felt relevant to myself and my generation of friends, which was that if you were starting out, I was in my 30s, I had friends who were beginning to buy their first home, have a family, or whatever, and they may have had inherited some furniture from family or been lent things or so on, might have gone to I don't think IKEA had started then, but that kind of thing. You're making a house, you're probably making a house on a budget, and you have an eclectic mix of things. And I wanted to be able to contribute to that to make a nice, relaxed home. So it could have been like the plastic printed tablecloths where I took cotton and had it coated. Because I was thinking in a practical way, you may have a nice kitchen table, but your kids might be there doing their homework. And it was trying to make a way of life that was fun and practical and welcoming. And the thing that I heard most over the years was how people, when they went into the shops, would feel kind of safe and uplifted in a way. It was like a kind of a kind of welcome space. And I think a home is really at its best when it feels like a welcome space, primarily for the owner, because a house should be about what we need for ourselves, not for other people, in my view. And it's not like having everything looking very smart that's not my motivation. It's about making things suit yourself. And I'm a social person in the sense that I've got big family. I love having my friends over. So it's really nice to make that house feel welcome for them too. But it's so much is about a mood and a spirit, isn't it? And that can be in food, visuals, so many things. At the moment, the scents I'm working with, these extraordinary geranium fragrances, have a very warming, grounding, it's kind of grounding and uplifting fragrance. And it's so strange. That's the same sort of mood that I felt with my previous business, but in a totally different direction. But it actually boils down to exactly the same feeling. It's quite bizarre that I haven't really shifted the dial very much. I'm just working with different tools.
That's well, for people who aren't aware of the C.Atherley brand yet, I mean, explain how you've gone from this global Cath Kidston brand of the homewares that we all know and love to,
Yeah.
to a sort of more kind of founder-led sort of how would you describe C.Atherley? You you best describe it. But because it
I
feels
mean,
it's about the same values, but done in a very different way.
it's true. I mean, it was a strange journey. I had an amazing time, very fortunate time. Hard work, really hard work, but incredible period with the Cath Kidston brand. I never expected it to go from one shop, which I hoped would stay afloat when I started, into this really quite international business. And I left when the business got very big, and I felt it was more of a corporation by that time. And I'm not really naturally a very corporate person, but off it went in different hands, and it was the end of a chapter which felt right. And so I went back home and thought, I'm going to spend time. I actually was really busy because we bought a new house. And so I could spend time nesting up and doing house things, which is like my idea of playing. It's if I'm not playing shop, I'm playing homemaking. It's like, two things that go kind of hand in hand together. Whether you're doing a window display or the hanging pictures on the wall or whatever at home. So I got involved in my house, built myself or bought myself a lovely greenhouse. And I began spending time in the greenhouse a lot and being outdoors. I think the thing I noticed most when I left work, I hadn't not worked since I was 17, was how much sky I saw that first year. And I began to get itchy feet wanting a print studio because I got so many ideas doing all these lovely things like going to museums or galleries. I really
missed having a trigger for those ideas. So I began with a small print studio, designing print and pattern for other companies because it's a kind of language which I know and I enjoy, and it's got a fantastic problem-solving energy to it that I really love. So I got the print studio going, and that got quite busy. We got some quite large contracts early on, which I hadn't expected. So I suddenly found myself with an office again and a small team. But I love working with younger people, so I was really lucky to have that kind of going on. And then we hit the pandemic, and luckily the team I had all managed to stay with me through that period. And we carried on working on these contracts we had. But at that time, I began to develop the idea of wanting to do something with my geranium collection I had. And I'm sure many people know about scented geraniums, but for those who don't, it's the leaves that are fragranced. And for one species, it has this most extraordinary breadth of variety. So there's these sort of woody mint fragrances, rose geranium, citrus, cedar. There's even one that, kids love that smells of Coca-Cola. There's this sort of crazy mad mix of fragrances in this one plant. They're also very beautiful, different flowers and colors and bits. So I started by drawing in the studio, working with them. And then I came across some very old friends I knew before I started Cath Kidston in the early 90s. They have a body care home fragrance company. And we talked about maybe making a magical product that there was this mood I felt in the greenhouse, this really calm, kind of clear mood when I was pottering, doing things. And I wanted to kind of capture the different fragrances in the mood. I mean, it's sort of the mood I had in the greenhouse was the same as I would associate with lying in the good bath, thinking of ideas or relaxing. To me, a bath is a great time of day to kind of reset and kind of settle and think about things. So I thought if I can capture my greenhouse in a bath, it's all mood driven. And it's no different than when I did the CK business, it was very mood driven. What would be uplifting? What would make you feel better? What would be fun and have a nice impact? And it was like why I designed an ironing board cover with a print on it. Because if I was doing my ironing, I wanted something that was quite cheerful at that moment rather than it being my grey, reflective ironing board cover or something. So back to mood and feel and all the rest of it. And from that, I began to develop the notion for this business.
So can you tell us about the particular products that you have? Because I've seen in Jack Thompson's store in Cowes where I discovered the
Yeah.
C.Atherley brand. So you've got the geraniums that smell a little bit minty, etc. They're by numbers, aren't they? They each have a number.
I've done three at the moment. So the first one is a very classic scented leaf, which has it's hard to distinguish exactly what it is because it's a blend of, it's eight essential oils, eight pure essential oils. And the leading ones, you'd have a hint of lemon, rose, mint, slightly woody, earthy fragrance. But it's this classic sort of scented leaf geranium fragrance. Then there's a second plant called tomentosum, which has this unbelievably clear but woody mint, big velvety leaves with a rich minty fragrance, which is beautiful for things like wash. And so geranium number two is based off that one, and all the packaging drawn with these different flowers and leaves. And then the third one, Maple Grey, really interesting one for some of this because it has a sherbet lemon fragrance to it, really clear, delicious. They all have a plant-based anchor to them, but this very citrusy smell, which helps ward off mosquitoes and things like that. And that makes a beautiful hand cream. It's a great gardener's present, but also kind of helps with the mozzies and so on. I think there's candle and hand cream in that one. So the idea is to do a couple more, but not do too many because it's then the very clear distinguish. There's probably a lavender, and of course rose is the queen of geranium. That's a very complex one we've been working on for a long time. So there's a nice surprise around the corner with that one. But they're all very different. But I love the way they're of one family and these sort of and the sort of cleverness of nature, how it creates these things is extraordinary, isn't it? It's
Mm.
amazing. There's, hand creams, bath oils, washes, lotions. bubble bath, bath salts, all those kind of things, what you'll call body care. And we now have in the whole fragrance range, there's room spray, a reed diffuser, and candles. So it's a neat range, but really beautiful to work on.
I love how that you've gone from like the tactile and the visual to bring in now the aromas and our sense of smell. And I heard that you had a cafe in Japan as well, like a multi-sensory cream tea cafe. Can you tell us a little bit about that? Because it seems like you're gradually covering all the sensory bases.
That was an amazing period. I had at one stage we had more stores in Asia than we had in UK for Cath Kidston, and I think there's still a big following there. And so part of the whole thing was wanting to bring a British experience to our lovely Japanese customers. And of course, a cream tea, what could be more English? And with the tablecloths and the bits and all the rest of it. So we totally replicated the idea of the scones and the cream and the jam and so on. And it's just, again, that thing of, with that business, it really connected to all those very English sort of joyful things. And a sort of, I remember as a child going on holiday to Cornwall and having like cream tea treat, all this and that. So it was a one-off that one, but it was the best fun. And so lovely seeing their reaction. We had the cake stands with the little biscuits and bits. And we thought about doing more in the UK, but to be running restaurants and things, you need a certain expertise. And I think it was probably too difficult to do, but it would have been wonderful. I loved that.
But if going back to like your beginnings with your interest in everything sensory, obviously you've always been somebody who had a real appreciation for what you were born with. But can you tell us about what your first inspirations, firstly for your first brand and then obviously C.Atherley, was it a house that you grew up in? Yours, your grandmother's, I think I've read about.
Yeah, no, there definitely was. I was very lucky to be brought up in a lovely house in Hampshire that had it's it was the end where my sister and I lived, and I just can so clearly remember rosebud curtains with blue stripes and pale blue paint and all of those things. And I wasn't really aware I was thinking of that when I started the business. I'd been working as an interior designer for a while. And in that period when I was decorating in the late 80s, it was very grand country house taste. And people were having kind of swags and tails, and it's hard to explain. I think if I tried to explain it to my lovely stepdaughter in her early 30s, she'd be like, "What are swags and tails?" It seems a long time ago. But I just felt there was a need to do something younger and more fun. And there's a sort of part of that whole country house world which is really very simple. So, for example, at home, my parents would have taken old wooden brown furniture and painted it white in our playroom. It would have had that feel to it. And so it's like vintagey. And it's really hard to think, but in the early 90s, when I began the shop, no one talked about vintage. It
Really?
was antique. It was all either serious antiques, and then there was junk shops like house clearance shops or antique shops, but there wasn't much in between of that sort of thing. And of course, there was no internet, so there was no, all the buying and selling that goes on through so many amazing channels. So I was buying furniture that people would normally strip to pine
Mm.
with the old paint on it. And I'd say, please don't. They always would strip a little bit, the dealers. There was a house clearance shop near me, and they'd scratch off some paint on a thing to show it was pine underneath so that it was more valuable, the piece. And I'd say, please don't scratch it. Can you keep it painted? And I'll have it how it is. And then from that, I collected an old rose wallpaper I found in this empty cottage in Wales where my mother lived. And I began to build a kind of mood and feel of what I could do. But I started out with a lot of vintage and antique bits, and I'd go to car boot sales because I had no budget. And so from the antique fabrics, I got all the inspiration. But I've always loved and had a really good memory for fabric and color.
Hmm.
I think I have some sort of I always get into trouble when I say this because I don't know what I have. But I kind of used to write back to front as a child and I'm left-handed and I can easily muddle things up. But I've got a really photographic sense of color and pattern and print and visual sense, which has really kept me in good stead. Um, And that, I think, where I started out kind of thinking in visual terms. Any business I do, I think in visual terms, then cash it up.
I'm with you. My first wine book was about being really specific about the Pantone references of wine and building them into a character to make the facts easier to remember because I learned visually and by color. So, what does color mean to you? Do certain colors really affect you? I know you're a big fan of certain red.
I definitely love red. There's something about a little splash of red, not too much, but a hint of red everywhere that I think has a really good pop to it. But the same thing actually works with a yellow, or I think I got into using red a lot with my old business because in a strange way, red goes with so much. It's an extraordinary color that you can blend it with so many things. Like pink and red and blue, on it goes. But it's an interesting thing. I think fashions change with, you know, th- all these lovely old prints and textiles and things are still very popular. And there's lots of brands now, young people going back to working with chintz and flowers and all the rest of it. But the thing that seems to change most in fashion is color. And so now, I mean, now there's a lot of paintwork that's in quite strong colours, aren't there? You see people painting their window frames, all sorts of really strong colours that wouldn't have happened in the early 90s. And when I look back at the colours that I worked with in that period, they feel quite dated to me now.
Right.
It's like a different era of, like these quite clean colour palette. And so recently we did a house up in London, and I've got sort of quite a different palette. I've got lots of sort of rusty colours and greens, and it just I think colour is a really flexible thing, and
Hmm.
it's not, and it's very easy to get stuck into something one naturally likes, but nice to branch out and spread out and push the boundaries with it. It's a really never-ending source of inspiration.
And cyclical too, probably. What might feel dated now will come right back.
Fashion is fashion, isn't it? You see everything. I mean, I'm old enough now to have seen, I don't know, certain things like, I don't know, think of something like tartan. It appears on the catwalk every so often, or platform shoes, or whatever it is. There's certain things. I mean, cyclical fashion, and it's so much about, I mean, it's like with food and what is in and out of fashion with food, isn't it?
Mm. Yeah, I think we're on the third iteration of flares, although I think they've gone again now, haven't they? I wore them the second time, so I didn't feel
Right.
like I'd wear them the third time, but I probably will wear them the fourth time they come back. Who knows?
Yeah.
So if we could talk to your earliest memories of all of these sensory things, then was there? We've talked about how how the homes that you were brought up in sort of must have had some kind of even subconscious effect. But how did that sort of appear when it came to maybe food and drink in that regard? What was on the table when you were at home? What do you remember that takes you straight back to those early days?
So we had a lady who cooked at home. My mother couldn't cook. She was quite spoiled. She had someone who cooked for her, Mrs. Nielsen, who was a really lovely woman who taught me lots of cooking. And she would cook very traditional English food, but very, very delicious things. But there would be quite a routine. So it would always be Monday would be the leftovers of roast on Sunday. So it would probably be cottage pie on a Monday. And there would be fish on a Friday, which was very traditional when I was growing up. And then there were things like horrible things, actually, like liver stew.
God.
When I was young, I just was like, ooh, pheasant, liver stew, all the rest of it. But my favorite thing, she'd make this most delicious thing, which was she'd boil chicken and slices of boiled chicken with clear stock gravy, with mashed potato. And we grew vegetables at home, so they'd be delicious, like baby beetroot and carrots. And that still is one of my most favorite things because it's very clean food, but really delicious. And I think it had bread sauce with it.
Lovely.
And then we'd have these special sausages my dad would bring back from Newmarket. There's a fantastic shop in Newmarket that makes famous sausages.
Is it still
And
there?
so, yeah, it is called Musk sausages. I get them online still. And toad in the hole, all those kind of things. Very, very traditional English things. But then I got taken when I was really small, not really small, but about 5, to France. And I always wanted to have what my parents had. So I learned to eat things like moule marinier and try still camembert cheese or something. So I had this whole kind of exotic dip into things before I went back to the liver stew. But lots of memories like that of trying. And my dad liked to take us to Indian restaurant, which was quite kind of ahead of its time when in the 60s, you know.
Yeah. I have two children and I wish they would try new things. They even get bored of beige food at the moment.
We were when my stepdaughter was young, she would always take her out to a restaurant and she'd eat. She'd order something, but in the meantime, eat all the garlic bread or the bread on the table. You know how kids just hoover up bread. And then when the food arrived, it was like, oh, I'm really full, I can't eat. And then when she got, and then the one thing she'd choose was pizza margarita, always margarita at that age. And then one day when she was in her early teens, we took them out. There was a whole gang of girls and a bit older boys. And this boy said, "Who's still a margarita girl?" Meaning you haven't moved on. And I remember really clearly like taking a gulp and saying, "Actually, I'm having pepperoni." But it's like this thing of how you learn to progress with food, don't you, into different it's like what your peer group are doing and how everything works. And then everyone eventually finds their own level of what they like.
I hope you're right. We're still on the margaritas. So how have you grown with that then? Do you cook? And what's your signature dish if you do?
Do you know, when I was younger, I cooked more. And so when I was a kid, I was taught to make all these kind of things like white sauce, cakes, bits by this lovely lady. So I know all the fundamental things of how to cook. But I'm not, I have to be honest and say I'm not the kind of person who dreams of food. I'm much more thinking, oh my goodness, I've got people around. What am I going to give them? And I think some of that was down to being very busy with work. And so I'm more likely, if I've got a weekend, I might try and think of something completely new or different to make. And then it becomes a project and it's fun. But my natural go-to thing is to make things I know how to do really easily without opening a book, just because I find it easier. And so that could be quite a lot of pasta, grilling vegetables, and all of that kind of thing. And I hate to admit this, usually have my mind on washing up.
Oh,
Like, for example, the idea of making a lasagna, I just think that is a lot of washing up for one dish. But a book that I lived off, which I find one of the best cookbooks, is that Nigel Slater 30-minute cookbook. He has incredible flavors. So I've got so many things from that.
yeah, lovely. He was a legend. So you've done so much, and from what I've read, a large part of sort of what inspired you to really get stuck into doing something meaningful was when your father passed away in your 20s. What can you talk to what effect that had on you in order to kind of to jumpstart what you were doing?
Gosh, it's such a long time ago that it's true that when my dad died, he died very quickly, he had a brain tumor, and died when he was 50. So it was very unexpected. And I think that feeling of knowing I was 19, that I needed to look after myself and be self-sufficient. And I need for survival, one has a feeling of what's needed or not. And I also wanted, I was very motivated. It's very strange when you lose someone, you still have, I had this overriding feeling I wanted to do something he would be proud of.
Hmm.
I think that's always been a subconscious motivating thing. And he was always interested in creativity and doing things. I had a lovely aunt who's a woman called Belinda Belville, and she was one of the women I knew who I really admired who worked when I was a child. And my dad loved Belinda. And there was this whole connection between, a lot of my mum and a lot of her friends were housewives in those days. But I had seen by sort of this amazing attraction of these women who were out doing things and getting on and really wanted to kind of make something of my life like that. And so, but I'd had ideas from when I was a very small child. I'd played shop when I was tiny. And so there was obviously something in me that liked that kind of life.
Yes. So I was going to ask, did that change how you became? I think it sort of sped things up by the sounds of it. So has this all given you a mantra for life? Everything that's happened to you and for you?
I don't know. After it took me a long time to get my business going and to gain confidence. And I was very lucky. I went to work for a man called Nicky Haslam, and he is incredible at giving people around them confidence. And he said to me, you're talented at doing this or that. And I began to really enjoy work. Whereas before that, I've been doing jobs that like working in shops and stuff like that didn't need that much qualification. And from him, I began to see that work and a career was a really interesting thing to do. So that helped me. But then I think, you know, for mantra for life, when I came to start the Cath Kidston business, it was a big risk setting up my own company. And I think the thing that motivated me was I knew if I didn't try it, I might regret it when I was older. Like, what if I tried to do that? And I just thought it's better to not have regrets and take a risk,
Mhm.
and actually, if one never gives things, when I went back into work again, I thought, am I right in doing this or not? I won't know. I'm going to try it and see. And
Mm.
so I think to kind of not be held back by fear is, fear is a very, very good natural instinct because it protects us a lot. But then being too cautious also is is can make things very difficult. And I've seen it with people around me. And it's just, is it something we inherit or not? I don't know. It's a hint of bravery.
Mm.
You know what really motivates me? I was asked a question about my grandpa, Glenn Kidston, who was this extraordinarily brave. He was a Bentley boy and very glamorous. And he had fought when he was very young in the First World War. He was 15, running on decks of boats and things. And he survived 5 accidents before he was killed. And he really was this extraordinary character. And I always think if I'm caught a Glenn, if I've got 2% of that in me, then I'm going to have a tiny bit of bravery somewhere. And I literally looked back, and I never knew him, but I know about him. And I thought, please give me just a hint of Glenn, and then I'll be all right. It's very nice to think that, isn't it? I'm lucky.
He does have a fascinating story, his legacy with yours. I love that. Mhm.
Yeah,
So I guess, how would you sum up your life in a toast to yourself?
I would say, my goodness, I've been so lucky. I really have. I really have had luck on my side.
Cath Kidston, MBE, thank you so much for joining me today.
Helena, it's been a total pleasure talking to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you for listening to this episode, and don't forget to subscribe so you know when new ones have landed. And I'd love to hear your comments, so do drop them in below or come and find me on the socials at Helena Sips. I also want to hear who you think I should be talking to next, so let me know. Until next time, go well.